Welcome to Marcor Studios, where here we will be interviewing different industry professionals and educating our homeowners as well as the industry as a whole. We hope you enjoy the show. Welcome to Marcor Studios. We are here with David Schieren. So, solar. Let's talk the fun of solar. What company are you with now?
So, Gina, it's an absolute pleasure to be sitting with you as always. And so happy now to be working closely with you as we enter this new phase of the post-tax credit solar and storage expansion. And in many ways, I think it's going to be even more durable, more sustainable, and better growth for the customer and for companies in the ecosystem. So now, proud to be advising through my role as a solar exchange principal. And specific to Marcor, I think it's extremely exciting to look at how do we, A, ensure systems are performing as they should, and B, meet the needs of customers where they want to add power capacity to cover increasing electric loads, and also add batteries, which have a resiliency benefit, meaning backup power when the grid goes down, but also now have so many other economic benefits. And so, at this moment, I think, as we enter 2026, if you look at just the Con Ed and PSG Long Island utility territories, there are roughly 200,000 solar installations on residential properties, okay? Con Ed territory in the 5 boroughs, because Con Ed also includes Westchester, but just in the 5 boroughs, residential batteries have been prohibited. We are working to get them approved. Westchester, they are approved with regulation, but Long Island has really been the early market leader in battery storage systems because we've worked with PSG Long Island and LIPA to develop programs that are advantageous. But even here in Nassau and Suffolk County, we only have roughly 5,000 batteries attached to, the Long Island share of that 200,000. We might have 100 or just shy of 100,000 systems. So you're talking about less than 5% of homes with solar have batteries. And if we have close to 1 million single-family detached homes, that's less than a very small percentage of the total building stock. Now, what's interesting too is that batteries can in fact be installed without solar,
which is a common misconception.
And they provide value, and the real way that they do that is twofold. The way that batteries provide value is really twofold. Right now in Nassau and Suffolk counties, number one, it can arbitrage energy, so you can store up energy by charging it at a very low rate overnight and discharging from 3 to 7 p.m. During the day, which are peak hours. Okay, that's number one. And number two, if you sign up for the program with PSG Long Island, you will get paid to inject power when there are grid events that occur over the summer, up to 10 events. So you can earn money by arbitraging and then also by selling energy to the grid. And then, of course, you have for backup power. Now, if you add solar into the mix, it can increase your savings. So, what we're seeing is in the post-tax credit world, the criticality of energy systems that deliver value to the grid. Solar has over the years, but you really need to make it dispatchable with the batteries, because solar, as we know, is only going to produce when the sunlight shines. And the batteries are controllable. That's why the utilities actually like it, and we're working very well with them on that.
Now, is it the FDNY that's really more of the obstacle right now on the batteries in the boroughs?
It is, yes. I mean, I wouldn't say they're an obstacle. I would say they are, primarily concerned with safety, and we respect that immensely.
Absolutely.
Okay. And, having said that, they've set up pretty rigorous procedures for us to, A, get the equipment approved properly. So that's step one. And what's kind of tricky about that is that the equipment is always changing.
Yep.
And so we have to make sure that the device that gets certified is good for us to use.
What's going to actually be
and then we can buy it.
Can install.
Right. So that's been a trick so far. But I think we're going to solve that this round. So for example, Tesla Powerwall 3, the current version of it that we're going to be using for a couple of years, that's the one that we expect to have approved soon as a system and a device.
Fingers crossed.
And then part 2 of that is they want the actual installation to be co-compliant with our current rules, which we have some objections to, and we're trying to come to a compromise as to what's safe, absolutely safe. We know these things are safe. I mean, that's not the issue. It's just what degree of visibility and control do they want, and what's reasonable. So we're working very carefully with them, and I think it's going to. I really do think we're going to make a lot of progress this year on that. Beautiful.
So, let's talk about the battery component on a residential, in the residential sector. There's a lot of misconceptions with batteries. Like I said, people don't know that they can have a battery without solar. Let's talk about why are batteries something that's going to be something we're going to see a push for on Long Island. Let's say for now.
Yeah, so, the number one, the technology is incredible now. I mean, Tesla has incredible technology because they manufacture a very high volume of vehicles, and it's essentially the same battery tech, although slightly different in their home Powerwalls. But there are other companies too. Enphase has a great product. SolarEdge has a great product. Franklin is a great product. There are 4 or 5 that are really exceptionally good products. So the fact that the technology is so good today and is cost effective makes it all possible. And the fact that Marcor knows how to install it and operate and service it properly it's all the vital foundational things to get this market going.
That's why we did what we did. Absolutely.
And when it comes to, making sense for homeowners. So we have a lot of folks with solar historically. The total number in the metro area is about 200,000. Long Island, it's probably close to 100,000.
Okay.
And only 5,000 have batteries right now.
Very minuscule number.
A small number of those we've retrofitted. So meaning they were existing solar, and people said, I want to get a battery. Tell me about that. Well, we can provide backup power. We take that solar if the grid goes down, and we charge it, and then we can use it when the grid's out. I mean, I will tell you that, Superstorm Sandy was a real eye-opening event from a resiliency standpoint because, even though the technology wasn't advanced, we still had solar and battery systems that were the only energy solution because at that time on the South Shore, we lost access to liquid fuels and they shut down the gas system. So I was driving around in my electric car, even back then. Because solar plus battery was the most resilient energy solution. So that's backup power. So most people raise their hand and say, I want, instead of a generator that's loud.
You just totally read my mind. Where people go between the generator or the batteries.
That's been the primary driver. Okay.
But when a Hurricane Sandy or something like that hits, now you're not going to have, and you don't have access to gas. Now you don't have the access to using a generator, let's say. So you're not.
And even on top of that, if you do, yes, that is a primary reason. But on top of that, there are a couple other reasons that people get interested. I mean, one is, first of all, it's just cool tech. As opposed to a generator, which is taking fuel, it's burning it, you're breathing in that fuel. It's right next to your home. It's loud. It requires maintenance. When you look at the cost over time, it's actually quite high. And it requires fuel hookup and just all these complexities. The battery is just there.
It's a set it and forget it, more or less.
It's a set it and forget it. And it does other things.
Correct. And you can change your settings on things and you can make adjustments when you need to. Like you have control of this battery.
It's incredible technology. So, you see real time, even when, the value is there on a daily basis because we set it up, depending on your load patterns, you set it up to do arbitrage.
Correct.
And that delivers, that just is a word to describe buying low and selling high.
You create your own little stock market over there.
And it's a pretty big. If you select the 3-tier rate, which is I think it's
peak, off peak, super peak.
It's 3 tiers. It's off peak, peak, and then there's an intermediate.
Yeah.
But so you have the low rate there is 12 cents a kilowatt hour. You buy overnight 12 cents a kilowatt hour, and you can sell or reduce your purchases from 3 to 7 p.m. at over 40 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's a 30-cent difference.
Delta, yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And then so people start, they come in interested in backup power, but on top of that, there are these other benefits. Now, there's something else to consider, which is these inverters, these batteries also have inverters on them. So you can use them natively as opposed to any other inverter. So when you pair the panels, you just have to connect them directly to the battery. So it can reduce your whole cost of the system and get storage.
Yep.
So it's a viable alternative to just solar and regular inverters. Now, again, people can go solar today and retrofit later with batteries, or even we're doing now with expansion. So
yeah, so that's the next thing was the expansion. So let's talk about those.
Look, I mean, the average Long Island family was using between 12 and 14,000 kilowatt hours, let's say over the past decade. But if you start to electrify your life, electric car, a heat pump for heating, your electric load can go to, what we're seeing now is the new average is trending towards 25,000 kilowatt hours per year. So we used to say, oh, 10
that's the size of a small commercial system. Like, you're talking a decent amount of offset now. So you're now having to increase the size of these systems, but more efficiently.
Exactly. And so the average system we always used to say was 10 kilowatts. It produced 12,000 kilowatt hours a year. That was roughly what people were using for their house loads. But now we're seeing these loads that are getting close to 25. Even a normal house can be 30,000 kilowatt hours, which means you need a 25 kW system to bring down your bill to effectively zero. So how do we do that? Well, roof area can be limited, but maybe we can put in modern panels that are a little bit more efficient and get more power. Maybe there's some sections we can add a few panels to. And even we can look at pergolas, right?
Yep.
We're starting to do this more. Carports. We're starting to do these things more and more.
Yep.
And so the goal is to get to that mark where we're offsetting 100%, which is doable.
Yep.
And then again, when you're looking to add, what's interesting, or even retrofit, to use one of these batteries as your primary inverter, but also as the battery backup, it's the right technology.
Yeah. So where do you see the future of this going? Is it where we're revisiting the existing solar homeowner that has it, or perhaps the second generation homeowner of solar, maybe somebody who bought a house that has solar, that maybe, let's say, their energy uses are, I buy your house, your energy usage is different than mine. So what we're seeing on the service, when we're running into the service side, is we're getting that second generation homeowner that bought a house that had solar, that the usage was lower than what their family needs. And now they're saying, well, we bought this house and now there's, now we're getting an electric bill. We were told that there's solar. And like a lot of people, and the misconception is they think solar is unlimited. Growing up, I'm sure your parents used to tell you, what my father used to tell me all the time. What do you think? I own the electric company? Turn the lights off, turn the TV off. And now I joke around with my kids. Just because we got solar panels doesn't mean it's free. It's limited, right? So like our panels are only making X amount of power in a day. So what is the best advice to that second generation homeowner who maybe has a system that's not offsetting? Is now the good time for them to say, okay, now let's reassess the situation and do a system expansion and add a battery backup to it? Like, when is the right time to be able to look into that for a homeowner who already has solar, where it's financially where it makes sense?
The people are busy,
are we?
And New Yorkers especially, it's impressive what we all do as a society.
Yeah.
And juggle. We do have a group of a very significant number of enthusiastic solar users, and that almost sort of the prosumers that watching all the time and understand what their energy consumption is and where solar is at, and if they have battery, the battery performance. But that's not most people. Most people don't really want to look at this.
Correct.
Right? So, I think that one of the flaws of our energy infrastructure in general is that there's a monthly bill, right? And the reality is, it's not like going to the pump and you fill up your car where you see a price all the time and you're like, you react to that. Most people don't even understand the price of electricity. It's not their fault. It's just who wants to spend the time dissecting their electric bill?
Most
right?
people don't.
So, that's what we're here for, right? I think that anytime you're a new owner of a system, I think it's a good time to just take stock. What's going on? What am I supposed to cover? Do I have a loan? What does that look like?
Well, and that's where Solar Roof Check's going to come into play, of doing the assessment of the existing systems, or when people are buying or selling their house, being able to get like more or less a full diagnostic of what's going on with the system, making sure you know everything there is about that system in that report.
I think that's an amazing service. It should happen on every single transaction.
Well, the reality is, if you think about it, if you're not going to have a third-party company come in and do it, and you're going to have the original installation company do it, is there going to be transparency if you call that company and they're going to tell you, yeah, well, you know what, there's a wire management issue under the panels here, and this is going to be able to be, potentially an issue, or there's an issue, you got, a commissioning issue, or you've got, an issue with your inverter. Nobody's going to want to say that something went wrong. And a lot of people have the misunderstanding on what is covered versus workmanship versus manufacturers' material defects or issues related to that. So I think that, unfortunately, the solar industry as a whole, aside from there were bad players and that there were people that were giving the industry as a whole a black eye, more or less, you also now have the companies that didn't really do things with a lot of integrity. We say it all the time, putting solar on 4-layer roofs, or putting solar on houses that had wood shake underneath 2 layers of asphalt, or just didn't do the due diligence that a lot of, companies like what we would do. And I think it really put some reservations on a lot of people for the right reasons, but an obstacle that we have to now overcome that really shouldn't have ever existed. Really, people have this. Solar is such an amazing asset. And if it's addressed properly, people get a lot of benefits out of it. But I think at this point, there's been so much negative that my goal is to expose the positives here, because a lot of companies aren't going to come in here and do an assessment and say, oh, well, we did this. Oh, we installed it on a 3-layer roof. They're not going to throw themselves under a bus. You want a non-biased opinion. You want somebody that's going to say, okay, it's at least a power purchase agreement or a finance. We do a 20-point roof inspection. We check flashings. We check layers of roof. We check ventilation. And then we're checking the diagnostics of the system itself. And I think that those are going to be able to, and I think that that's where the opportunities are going to be, where maybe somebody bought a house that there was a husband and wife living in. They were, empty nesters. Their kids moved out and they wanted to downsize. They sold that house and they sold it to a family with 2 kids. Their usage is going to be up. And maybe then on top of it, they put a pool in the backyard with an electric heater and a hot tub. And then they come to us and they say, well, why is that electric usage so much more? Oh, you got 2 more bodies living in the house. You put a hot tub, which in itself is going to increase your usage, and then you put an electric pool heater in. There's so many different things that people don't realize that we take for granted as humans, that, just these lights in this room and, the TV's on, things like that. They're all pulling off electric, and that's got to come from somewhere. So expanding the systems, I think that the second people hear system expansion, they're thinking, and a lot of the times at that point you want new modules or you want to upgrade the system. Let's put to rest at the moment, if we can, the concerns that homeowners are coming back with of the expense of that, of, well, now does this make it a financially beneficial investment? I did this to be a financial benefit 15 years ago. And now I'm told that I should get a new system, a bigger system now with better technology. How many times for years we were hearing people say, I don't want to go solar just yet because I want to wait for the next bit of technology to come out. It's 2026. The technology we see is going to continue to evolve. So what do we tell those homeowners where they're leery. I tell them, hey, listen, it's numbers. Nobody has to fight with numbers. They either, it's math either makes sense or it doesn't make sense. Unless it's like third grade Common Core stuff, then it doesn't make sense. But ultimately, these system expansions are not as expensive as people think they really are. What are your thoughts on that?
So I mean, a couple of thoughts. There's a lot of really important things that you just said. I would say that start off with the independent inspection diagnostic. I think that's such a vital service in anything we do in life. Having an independent view and analysis is very helpful and worth it. These systems should last a long time. They should perform for the last time. And in many cases, they save between $1,500 and up to $4,000 a year. With a battery, they can even get up to $5,000 a year of savings and earnings. So it's pretty significant. And then with regard to, understanding technology, evolution, and system expansions, I mean, what we've seen with panels in terms of an efficiency boost over the years, it is occurring, but it is incremental every year.
Correct.
It's not a step change. The average has been, I want to say 2.5, 3% power increase per year about. And so the folks that we installed in 2007, those panels are still working.
Yep.
They're great.
Yep.
They've already made their money back.
Yep.
Okay. And is it time to replace them? I don't necessarily think so.
Well, I'm not saying replace. I'm saying when you're going with a system expansion, a lot of the times you can either add to that system. I've heard other companies say, hey, listen, let's just upgrade the whole system at that point.
And we've done that too.
Yep.
And that might be a recommendation we make.
Yep.
Now, but it depends. It depends on many factors. What is the design? What kind of roof area are you talking about? Do we have extra roof area? Or is it, is this a natural pergola in the backyard layup?
Yep.
Which I happen to personally love because I think that's how we're going to, so you can really achieve what your goal is at the house. But, I think that's it. This takes a little bit of analysis, design review, technology review, and then looking, as you say, at the math. The math it's clear.
Yeah.
It tells us what we need to know. And for the most part, these things are, as you say, it's accretive. And especially when you add the battery in there for the expansion or the full system replacement. Something else we could talk about, which is inverter repowering. We kind of refer to it. Let's say your system's 10 years old or older.
Yes.
You may have an inverter that's out of warranty. Doesn't mean it's bad, but it may be time to replace it or upgrade it. And that's an opportunity too to upgrade with the battery because you can replace that inverter with that. So there are a lot of different options, and it's going to depend on the individual case.
Everything stands on its own merit because everyone's needs are different.
And, but we're seeing one thing that I think, just to bring it back to this is kind of what you started with, the tax credit was critical for many years to help drive growth. But in some ways, it created artificial demand because it was the government saying, here's an incentive. We want to help deploy and grow this technology. I think there were merits to that strategy because we wanted to incentivize a new energy source to diversify energy sources. But now what we're staring at as industry is saying we need to thrive without it. And we're going to. And this technology stands on its own. We deliver value to the grid. We get paid for that. We deliver value to the customers. It's a beneficial technology. And, we're not even talking about environmental benefits, but I can share with you that one of the reasons why I started doing this years ago is because, I believe that we should all have clean air. Like that's a common interest for society.
Yeah.
People don't realize how dirty our air quality is actually here. We violate the EPA standard regularly, probably 40 times per year. And that's the EPA standard, which is not even very high. And a lot of that has to do with our power generation, on island and in the metro area. Look, that's not evil. The power companies aren't evil. The power generators aren't evil. That was how we created this economy that we have, right? It's not evil, but do we want to over time
but it still
clean
hurts.
the air?
Yeah,
we do. It's just what we. Our electric car is better than gasoline cars. Yes, because first of all they're cool and they're fun to drive, but also they don't pollute into the air.
Yep.
Isn't that good? Yes. Now,
Yep.
climate change is a different issue, right? And that's a controversial issue. We don't have to get into that now. I am personally concerned about the science behind climate change. I think that, we don't want to mess with planet Earth. I don't think that's a good idea.
Agreed.
But if we just leave that aside for a second, I think the basic issue, and Mayor Mike Bloomberg actually made this point in his book. He's got a great book about this. He's like, forget about talking about climate change. Let's talk about cleaning the air. That's a good thing to do for our public health. But bringing it back, it's just about the money. We can have these other goals. Doesn't matter. We have to save people money and the system money, and we are.
Yep. Well, I'm looking forward to doing a lot more of that. So
awesome.
I'm glad to have you aboard.
Cheers.